So PlayStation's official Pro controller is out and I've finally gotten it in hand. This controller has been long awaited and has some incredible features like adjustable depth triggers, swappable thumbsticks, and even remappable back buttons. While not the first Pro controller to market, it's definitely the first official Sony PlayStation 5 Pro controller. And today I'll take you through the unboxing, setup, and review of how this controller is and how I found the most value out of it. Keep in mind, I'm absolutely trash at gaming, so we'll see if this can actually make me a little less awful. I will have this link down below in the video description if you do want to check it out, as well as everything else in my setup. And if you're new here, thanks for stopping by. On this channel, I cover gaming, tech, and a few things in between, so if you enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like or subscribe. If you don't, you're gonna bite your tongue twice in the same spot today. Okay, so retailing at $200 USD, what do you get? Well, right out of the box, you have this hard plastic carrying case, which feels pretty high quality, and it's all PlayStation branded. I was half expecting a material, but it kind of makes sense being plastic to match the PlayStation 5 aesthetic. Unzipping this inside, you have the Dualsense Edge controller itself, alongside a bunch of accessories. On the top side of the case is a netted part with a braided Type A to C cable for connecting, updating, and charging the Dualsense Edge controller. It's actually really long and thick, which is a great sign. For the other accessories, you have both rear bumpers and paddles, which are used for remappable buttons, different style thumbsticks, which are hot swappable to your preference, as well as this mechanism that locks the Type C cable to your controller if you do need to use it. The case also has this Velcro slot for feeding in and charging your controller if you want to. Getting this thing in hand, it actually feels really high quality, and it's heavier than I thought it'd be. The design of this controller is very familiar to the regular Dualsense, but there are some noticeable differences. Most noticeably is the front removable plate, which comes in a glossy black, although I really would have preferred a matte black, but it doesn't really make a difference. It just gets a lot of fingerprints, if anything. As well, the buttons are blacked out compared to the white you find on the original Dualsense controller. The center pad has tiny PlayStation logos on it, which is a nice touch. And there's also a tiny LED here which shows which profile you're on, which I'll talk about that in a bit. Like the regular Dualsense, the controller does have super tiny PlayStation emblems all over, which helps with grippiness, but what's new here is that they've also added them to the triggers, which actually helps a lot for grippiness here as well. On the front end, we do have the new function buttons beneath the left and right joysticks for swapping profiles and additional functions. On the back, you have a right and left slots for either your paddles or bumpers, which we'll also touch on. Lastly, you have a Type-C port for connections, charging, and updating. But starting with the triggers, this is easily one of the most popular reasons you'd be getting this controller for, and that's the adjustable trigger depth. Each trigger does allow you to change between the depth of how far they move until they activate. You have the standard where it moves all the way, a very shallow press, and a spot in between. This is absolutely incredible feature, especially for people playing first-person shooters where button press speed makes all the difference. For myself, hopping into Call of Duty and Overwatch, it's a no-brainer to set each trigger to a shallow press to hopefully get an edge on the enemy. I still don't know if this is a placebo or not, but I always seem to do better with Pro controllers. Firing weapons is super quick if you need to tap quickly, especially for those who like to use semi-auto weapons, and even more badass is using this when playing Overwatch. This game is super dynamic since there's like 30 heroes, each with their own playstyle. I actually use 2 different trigger settings depending on which hero I'm playing at any given time. And when it comes to playing Call of Duty, this is hands down where I get the most value from the triggers since I straight up ruin people's day. This controller is the only way I can compete with these cracked ass teenagers with 16 hours a day on Call of Duty. Either way, whatever you're playing, it's easy to swap to fit whatever game, especially if you like to play racing games, a sandbox, or whatever else. The triggers are easily my favorite feature on the controller. Similar to the swappable triggers, there's also the buttons on the back end which are remappable, and this makes a huge difference for never having to take your thumb off the joysticks. Again, you either have paddles or bumpers or one of each. I personally always click paddles by accident, so I'll probably end up using the bumpers. All you gotta do is put them near the slot and they sort of attach magnetically, and once in, they're actually super clicky and tactile, almost like mouse clicks. I do wish all buttons on this controller were like this. This can be mapped depending on what game profile you're on, and for me on Overwatch, I usually swap this to crouch as well as map pings. And when playing Call of Duty, I usually remap this to reload and slide. I also want to mention this is absolutely great for accessibility, especially if anyone's missing an index or middle finger. You can always remap this to a trigger. Mapping it's easy by creating a profile for the controller on your PS5 and selecting which button you like to map it to. And when it comes down to the thumbsticks, there's even more customizability here as well. I actually love the default thumbsticks, and I could easily get by with these, but they are swappable to other ones included. Again, you have 2 short domed ones and 2 taller sticks. I personally don't really like dome sticks, but that's just me. I don't even know what I'd really use it for, but I do love the long sticks for aiming, and I just prefer the way that feels. They are super easy to swap out too. All you gotta do is lightly pull up and away on the stick to take it off and snap in whichever one you want. And as a normie who doesn't really throw down mega gaming sessions like I used to, I actually haven't experienced any stick drift ever across any controller. That said, the Dualsense Edge does have removable stick modules entirely, which is perfect if you ever need to replace them, or even just swap them between themselves if one is starting to wear out. And just like the joysticks, it's easy to swap by releasing the front plate and lifting the lock. Pull it out and click on the new one and away you go. And something I'll likely never do is play with the joystick ramp settings. Simply put, I don't really think I'm good enough at games to really appreciate this, but I'm positive other people will see huge benefit from it. I'll probably dabble with this eventually since I've been playing a lot of competitive Overwatch on console as of late. So with all the customization of the controller itself, you can also complement all of this by having individual profiles. The Dualsense Edge can hold up to 3 profiles apart from the default and can be swapped using the function button in either X, square, triangle, or circle, and you'll see the LED blink on which profile you're on as well as a notification on your screen. For myself, I have the profile for FPS like Overwatch as well as another one for Call of Duty, and then a profile for sandbox games. I'm sure I'll find a reason to map others, but for now these will do just fine. But not only do the function keys allow you to swap between your profiles, it does also allow you to change volumes. I've been waiting for something like this since you don't actually have to go into your settings. The function button with the D-pad up and down swap volume, and function D-pad left and right allow you to change your chat to gain volume mix. And apart from the 3 profiles you can have on your controller, you can always store up to 30 on your PlayStation 5 itself and swap them over at any time. This is perfect if you're returning to a game you haven't played in a while, or if there are multiple users of the controller itself. And talking about the battery, it's fine really. I believe this is rated for up to 11 hours, but I'm not really throwing down those long sessions like I used to. Of course, you can always charge it up with the long ass cable, which can be locked to your controller like I mentioned. The cable is long enough though, it does reach from my TV to the couch, so it's not really something I need to worry about. This is perfect for competitive players who don't want to connect wirelessly, and you pair that with the cable lock, a tournament profile to disable your system keys, and you're all set. And if you don't want to charge by cable and you have one of the Dualsense docks, you can always just set it on there and it'll charge no problem. And while you're obviously mostly playing this on PlayStation 5, I can say it still works with PC and connecting it like a normal Dualsense controller if you just so happen to want a game on PC. I mentioned in my last video, even though I'm gaming on PC, for me, some games like Witcher 3 or Red Dead Redemption 2 are better played with a controller. And of course, you still got all the normal Dualsense features like the built-in microphone, speaker, and headphone jack when you're on PlayStation 5, so it's a good thing it's still there. I will mention I reviewed the Victrix Pro BFG in my last video, which doesn't have haptics and rumble, so it's still nice to have that in a Pro controller. I might do a dedicated comparison video, but there are some things to be missed by comparison, such as being able to swap the joystick orientation or even the D-pad itself. But let me know in the comments if you'd like to see a comparison video. Okay, so what do I think overall? Honestly, this controller is absolutely incredible. It's a great mix of pro functionality for the more serious gamer, but still has all the regular DualSense features like haptics and rumble. For myself, it's really hard to say if this is the best since I also just reviewed the Pro BFG, but I'm super pumped both have finally hit the market. I can't say if it makes me any better at games, but it's still nice to hope either way. If you do want to see my review of the Pro BFG, I'll have that link down below in the video descriptions since it really is a nice alternative to the DualSense Edge. But I'd love to hear it. What would you be playing with the DualSense Edge? Anyways, that's been it. Thanks for watching. Till next time.